So I'm going to get cracking, and people can sort of catch up if they join late and watch the recording. But I've got quite a bit to get through, and I really want some good discussions at the end as well, and some of your inputs. So 2 weeks ago, I did a webinar on building a enterprise AI moat and the reasons why organizations, experienced organizations, large organizations, can really leverage AI now to defend themselves against competition and to actually trailblaze in the industry that they're in, and the things that they needed to start thinking about. Well, this webinar builds on that and asks the question why people are missing this moment, why you see a lot of examples in the industry of AI for efficiencies and small isolated pilots and individual productivity gains, but we're not seeing the level of kind of AI advantage in the industry where people are saying we're reimagining our processes, we're transforming our services to our clients. AI is making a fundamental difference to our business, where we know that AI is a shift that is coming, that is here already, that is going to transform every industry. So this webinar is going to explore that. So just very quick couple of slides about GW. We're a technology consultancy, and we build custom products that deliver business value and business impact. We've worked with many different large organizations across different industries. Many of these we've worked for over 10 years. So you see, we don't just deliver one product, we help organizations with their strategy, what products to come next. And certainly innovation, we're seen as an innovation partner to a lot of these. Now, in this webinar, as well as a good discussion and hopefully some nice slides that you can take offline and have a look through, I'm really hoping you leave with these takeaways. I really hope that you see what success factors you can apply to your organization for enterprise AI adoption. I've got this concept of AI habits that I've come up with, that are the things that you could do today to start reaping more advantage from AI. So I'm going to give you a few snippets of those and send you in the direction of an assessment that will help you kind of gather more and make it more specific. Me and my colleagues have been working on what we call intelligence blueprints. So these are the accelerators, these are the design and implementation accelerators to ensure you can apply AI in your world with your systems. And I'm hoping to inspire you to say that's a great approach. You know, this is the way that we should go, and I can share more details after on that. So ultimately, that's what I want you to get out of it. So why listen to me? Why am I qualified to sort of talk to you and share all of the ideas around this? Well, I've worked in enterprise software for 30 plus years across many different organizations. So I've gone through many technology shifts, through the web to mobile to connectivity API driven solutions. I've worked on business process management, service oriented architecture, which were all about surfacing technology for business gain. So I've learned a lot through that. And to me, AI is bringing together, is making all of those elements still valid, but is accelerating it more. So I'm now responsible for innovation at GW, making sure that with our clients, we move to the next generation of software in the right way for the right business value, right? So as part of that, I'm going to be sharing all of my experience and all of my ideas on this. What you'll also see, we'll be a bit more active with blogs, white papers, etc. So hopefully that qualifies me at least to share my perspectives. You may have different ones, and I really want to debate that. I really want you to kind of add in the chat to that. But hopefully some of my ideas will resonate with you. So to make it not just about me, though, I'd like to start, now that everyone, I think, has arrived, with one question to you straight away. And I'd like you to sort of get into the chat and just to get you thinking, because I want you to think throughout this webinar. In your organisation, from your perspective of where your organisation sits in the market, what's the biggest barrier to Gen AI success? What's the barrier from turning Gen AI pilots into value-driven products in production? So yeah, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes, just get on the chat. Hopefully everyone can use the chat, and just put some ideas on of what you think the biggest challenges are. And hopefully we'll circle back to some of these at the Q&A at the end, and just see whether you've had some ideas out of this webinar as to, you know, how you can tackle some of these. So Tom's early on siloed use cases, yeah, individual rather than organization. We see a lot, and that is quite natural with building maturity, that people will look at efficiency first of all, get their confidence up, which is the right thing to do. But I know that the boards I work with and the executives I work with want to really like transform business processes and services now, right? Leon, from the Amazon point of view, Barry, isn't it AI itself? It's organization readiness. I think that resonates with many different organizations. Leon, I think people think from the outside, looking at organizations like Amazon, they must have a great kind of organizational setup and are ready for all the new technology. But I think, you know, large organizations like that are the same as others, that getting everyone on board, getting the culture right is absolutely key. Yeah. What else have we got here? Trust, transparency, explainability. The trust of AI. Yeah, man, it's like you've seen my slides, which you haven't, but we talk a bit about trust a bit later on. So experimentation to production, Mark says. So yeah, and any others? Feel free as I go through the slides. You know, add a few more ideas, and we'll circle back and have a read of them. POCs are easy to build, but when you need to start coordinating multiple stakeholders, becomes more complex. Yeah, it does feel like a lot of the themes are, this isn't about a technology challenge, it's about an adoption challenge. So yeah, thanks everyone for and Joanne, yeah. Stakeholder understanding what to do and why, don't understand it, yeah, they don't like to invest time and money. It's a great paradox that AI is changing everything. And I've worked with organizations that budget for AI and for AI transformation and understand this wave is coming, we've got to prepare for it, and put people through training and investing time to do pilots and first solutions. And then there's other organizations that say, no, everything needs a business case, and I want to prove it first before I invest in it. And it's one of the big challenges, because the confidence is built by adoption, by doing it, by people seeing the problems, making the mistakes, finding solutions for those. And I think this is one of the big challenges that leaders need to make. How do they invest to allow people to experiment, to build up confidence, but still drive towards those North Stars of value? So yeah, great. Thanks everyone for the input on that. I'm now going to move on to a little video, and I showed this last time, but it's so key to me. I find this video so interesting. This was a Base 44 advert that they showed at halftime in the Super Bowl this year. So you can see how much investment there is in AI marketing, because those are the premium slots. And this is all, for those who don't know, Base 44, it's an excellent product for prototyping and building quick apps. So building, you know, apps as almost like citizen developers. So I'm just going to press play.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible.
Nina can't code.
Interesting. Can you generate reports?
It can now.
So you're saying we can all build apps now?
Yeah.
I'm on lunch. I gotta make a call. I'll be in my office. Just built an inventory tracker. Protein calculator.
Book sharing app.
A workflow manager that
Tracks who still owes for the group lunch.
Trash duty schedule.
Since no one seems to care.
Just built a
I just created a goal tracking system.
We built the same thing, didn't we?
Yep.
I'm actually going to stop it there with we built the same thing, because that's the thing that made me smile. but slightly horrifies me. And I've seen this before. I've been in the industry long enough to see when I first started and Excel started becoming more and more productive. Everyone's databases were in Excel. You'd go and we'd look at their enterprise database and say, where are you getting that data from? Oh, I've got a spreadsheet for that. Where's that? Oh, it's in this folder. Oh, is that shared? No, that's on my personal drive, right? So we had a huge nightmare with bringing all of that fragmented data together into data warehouses, into enterprise databases to integrate that. And that was just with Excel, right? Now we've got the ability for people having a problem to build an app quicker than it is to go through IT and integrate even an off-the-shelf app, right? And this is exciting, hugely exciting. For me, with children, I see my children building apps constantly. You know, my son uses Codex V0, and at the weekend, they were playing poker, a little fun poker, not betting or anything. And my youngest couldn't download the app because he wasn't old enough. So my middle son, 15-year-old, went and spent the evening copying that app and building one without the guardrails on, without the betting involved, to actually roll out and allow them to play together. And I think that sums up how easy it is to fill gaps with new apps, right? Well, I went to a Vercel, who were the founders of Vercel were early contributors to React and defined Next.js as a front-end JavaScript framework, and now they're all over AI. They are, building apps by allowing you to prompt and describe that, but more of a developer focus. Even they internally, they needed some project tracking tools, and their management went out to procure a SaaS app for it. And then their CEO decided, why are we spending the time going through procurement, right? And he built an app for them, right, by prompting it. And they started using that, and then they all contributed that to that and extended it. So, large organizations are seeing that apps can just be composed, to fill gaps. But from, executives and leaders within IT and within the business, it's something we've got to be hugely kind of aware of, and make sure that we are putting the platforms and the tools in place, that we're not getting fragmentation here. So I actually decided that there was a scene missing from this video. And what should have happened really is that the business and IT should have collaborated on gaps. So this was another need where they wanted a chatbot for the solution, and they decided to build it themselves.
Could we build?
Just going to rewind, make sure it's loaded.
Could we build this feature?
I'll use the Smart Assistant blueprint.
Yeah, like that.
I'll send it to you to show the team.
Perfect. Now let's integrate it.
So it's a small step, but I would love for that to be same office, same people, but actually they've got an idea. So the people who've got the need, rather than building it themselves, work with people who know how to roll out these apps in a secure, integrated, scalable way, right? The competition is that way, that strategic compounding of the technology by building apps in a structured way has to be as fast or nearly as fast as the business users or the citizen developers can fill the gap with things like Base 44 or NA10 or Made.com or, Lovable, etc. So that's our new challenge within IT and within delivery, to put the frameworks and the platforms in place, the blueprints in place, where these apps can be generated or built by the IT teams as fast as they can be defined in the product teams, right? That's my challenge really. And so I'll summarize that by sort of saying we're in a moment now, we're in an inflection point. For the first time in decades, building software has become much easier, right? But there's a danger. that's not applied to build business advantage. That is still hard. Understanding how to get the people on board, how to find the right product design that will meet your customers' needs, how to test things in the market, how to evolve, how to scale when the unexpected adoption, shoots vertically up rather than the small, scaled back rollout that you wanted of it. How you recover from mistakes that are made, right? So for me, this is hugely exciting. For me, who started his career building software and then moving into more architecture and design and then definition, then working with businesses to get the most out of technology. This is exciting now because those challenges I moved on to are still the hardest challenges, right? So why are people not moving towards that advantage and leveraging it? There was a MIT NANDA, MIT NANDA State of Business survey that kind of resonated with me a bit, that kind of came up with what the top barriers are. And they weren't about technology, change management, sponsorship, poor user experience, solutions coming out that don't fit around the way that you work, right? So this resonated. And from my experience and talking to leaders, I've identified as well 5 major pain points, and I've actually applied this. You'll see the images that I've generated. Yes, are that fictional office that were in base 44, and maybe some of the problems if we fast forwarded a year or 2 years in that office, the sort of problems they would have, right? And then we'll look at how we can solve those. So the first is this explosion of tools, right? In that video, everyone was using one tool, base 44, but I guarantee that's not the way reality is. Someone will be using, Vercel, Made.com, ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude. Claude is probably one of the most popular tools for actually, not just using it for the question and response, but actually building little apps now. People will be using Copilot, Codex. So it's getting easier to build, but harder to control, coordinate, drive towards that same strategic North Star. And hopefully, please thumbs up in the chat or whatever if any of these are resonating with you. And I think this will be one of the challenges for IT, that through any innovation, you'll often diverge and then converge on the way forward within an organization. And we're almost at peak divergence, really, of these AI tools. Okay. I think legacy still is a challenge. There's their boss in the background. You didn't see him in the Made.com, but that's how I envisage him with some of the behaviors in that office. So I think that legacy and systems that existing systems will still be barriers to change within organizations. It's getting easier to build the front end, but if the engineers are not involved and we haven't got our systems integration structured okay, they'll be isolated, they'll be silo solutions, and we'll have an integration headache in 2 years' time, right? Let's put the platforms and the blueprints and the architecture in place so that when we do roll out these new solutions, they are integrated, they work with your existing systems. Cultural resistance, we saw that in some of the chats earlier on, some of the barriers, again, it always amazes me that when we get people together and we talk about their concerns, their fears, whenever we do a workshop, we always start with hopes and fears. And there's always some great fears, right from AI taking over the world to just, what's the position of my job in the future, to just something specific like how do we test and know that it's not drifting the solutions. But whenever we get people together from different backgrounds, we always have good discussions on those fears and what we can do to mitigate those and how we can move forward within those. So this is solvable to me. But it's solvable by getting the right people together and by actually moving forward and trying things and showing successes and making a few mistakes, but knowing how to solve those, right? That's the way we move forward to that. And all organizations I've seen that have done that, break down these cultural barriers of resistance of, you know, what will be the future of my, and most people in these workshops whose fear is what's the future of my role contribute heavily into what the new world with AI will look like. They don't have to worry about their roles there. They will actually just save more time on the sort of the tasks that can be automated, and they'll start creating with the organization. They'll start adding value, you know, but push them into one corner in a desk and just say, here are the tools to use, and they won't have that confidence. Yeah. Another big challenge, and we saw that in the barriers at the start, is how you move from proof of concept or pilot to production to actually adding value to your customers and to your business, you know, in the services that you provide. We see hugely impressive AI prototypes that could be maybe generated in hours, you know, that might have taken weeks before. But actually, when it's exposed to real systems with real data, with real customer use, you realize you've only done 20% of the job, you know, the 80-20 rule. I actually think with AI, it's more like 10-90 or 5-95 now, because it's so easy to do that first stages, you know, and it's very hard to get to get it scaled, you know, in production and putting it in place. So, you know, this is something that yeah, is making us so more productive in one angle, but building a backlog for actually getting the adoption into production successful. See a lot of organizations that have got a backlog of tens, even 50 with one organization, POCs that are waiting to be engineered correctly so they can start to add value. All of these together, what I'm seeing happening and interviewing executives is, yeah, everyone's busy. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of work around efficiencies. But if you ask people what the real measurable business advantage has been to their organizations of AI, it will be we're all more efficient, you know, but then the finance director will say, but the costs haven't come down to meet that efficiencies that you're promoting, you know, and the governance teams will say, yeah, things are more automated, but how do we know it's right? There's a lot of looking over the shoulder at competitors, but I see in the press that competitor A is reaping these benefits with AI. They're fully automated their decision process, or their creative process is really driven by AI. So, you know, there's definitely this concern at boardrooms that all of the activity is not translating to bottom line benefit or, you know, growth or, improved customer promotion scores, etc. So with those 5 pain points, I would say we are at a moment of truth. We either carry on just looking at AI for its productivity and its efficiencies, or we start now moving on to look at how we can reimagine the business, you know, how we can actually take what we've learned from this first phase of AI and really use it to make a business impact, right? There are 3 items that I'm going to go through now, 3 moments that we've got to decide which path to take on. The first is all about this vibe coding future. For those who don't know the term vibe coding, it is a term that's arisen to better represent how coding with AI, whether it's low coding or engineers coding with AI, how that as kind of manifesting itself. So instead of the traditional cycle of understanding some product requirements, doing some prototypes to see, you know, how that would work, translating that into tests and changes, user stories, and then actually building that and assessing against the tests that you've hopefully written up front and automated, and going through that cycle. The difference with the AI tools and the productivity that they give is now you can actually iterate around a lot faster. So if I go back before the start of my career, when IT first came in, you'd build some code, you'd write some code, and you'd have to submit it to be running on some server somewhere, and the next day you might get to test it, right? And then that has become progressively, that latency to be able to test it has come earlier and earlier. So, you know, in more recently, you would write some code, you'd wait for it to compile, you'd wait for it to pass sort of PR tests, and then you'd run it, deploy it to a server, and then you'd be able to test it. So it's gone from overnight to, you know, minutes to be able to do that. With the modern engineering kind of disciplines, you can now do that within seconds. You can make your change, compile locally, run it against an integrated environment, and test your and run your tests like immediately on that. With AI and Codex and V0 and all of these great tools, it's become virtually instant to see the impact of your changes of code. You know, you can actually ask it to make a change for you. It will run through pretty fast and make that change, and you'll be able to see that working straight away. So the latency from coming up and defining a change to actually seeing it working has contracted massively, right? Now that means you can do more as well as do things faster. So I was talking to our engineering director just earlier this week, and on one code base that had 80,000 or 800,000 lines of code, there was a desire for months and months to put some refactoring into this to make it easier to change, and therefore it would be kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that actually make it easier to change, then AI can change it easier. So I actually sat down, and something that might have took 3 weeks in the past to go through all that code base, check all the tests are running again, they did in a matter of days or even hours, right? So using AI as an assistant, they went through just 2 of them, I think, refactored the whole code base, make sure that things were abstracted out, that were repeatable, that things had consistent naming, all the best practices were applied, that the test coverage was full. Did that in hours, and that now enables any change from AI to A, be quicker, and B, be better, right? So vibe coding is not just about generating out prototypes. It's that idea that you can refactor as you go along, that you can change the structure of your code, you can build in new requirements quick, right? So we've got choices of how to use this. We use this with good engineering disciplines, with good product disciplines for benefit for the products we're shipping to our clients, or we use it for prototypes. And my advice is we move beyond just using it for prototypes. We get into the disciplines that, you know, this will actually bring disruption to our company. The second moment of truth really is that I think organizations, I think they've always realized this, but I think they're realizing that they need to leverage this now, is that they're sitting on a mounting of value. You know, I talked in the webinar 2 weeks ago about if we had the engineering practices now and we could build products and ship products as fast in the you know, digital world that we can now, sort of 30 years ago, then would Netflix and Blockbuster, you know, battle, would that have been different? You know, would Blockbuster have been able to take all of their insights about people's behavior of renting films and then, you know, actually distill that into the recommendation engines, the customer experience, you know, not needing to deal and just make all their money from late fees, etc. So these organizations that have got the data, the understanding of customer behaviors, the understanding of where the future of their market would go, and the ability to integrate it into their customers' world should hold the advantage here, right? They've got these golden assets, they've got the mountain of value. You know, these large organizations have got to stop sitting on their hands and waiting for the market to change and take a, you know, a front seat in changing that market. So I think that's the moment we're at now, that they can defend against the competitive advantage of new startups and new incumbents and other leaders in their organization. But it shouldn't be like that. You know, we're working with finance companies that are 100, 150 years old. They've got mountains of value embedded within that, mountains of lessons that if they can distill into the services and the products they're offering for their clients, they should have a huge advantage. The third moment is what I'm calling the compounding intelligence system, right? So those data, the process, and the AI are the most valuable ingredients. That mountain of value that I talked about in the previous slide is where now that can be applied. But that will only be applied if you have the platforms and the processes to be able to get that out in the market, to understand your customer needs, to actually share that across the organization, have the human AI collaboration with the feedback loops. So intelligence will compound the more that you feed it, the more context you give it, the more improvements, the more results, the more Q&A that you give it, it will compound. It won't just incrementally get better. It will be kind of, an exponential curve of the value that you give to it. So the ones that actually are best positioned to win, that have got all of this information, are often the ones that don't know where to start with all of this. But if they start getting some products and solutions out there, learn from that, apply their context, then they will be in a good position to succeed. So I think that my sort of premise, my perspective, point of view, is that these large enterprises, all the sort of enterprises we work with that are in competitive markets, that have been running for many years, that have got larger employee bases, it's not that they don't like the advantage that AI is giving others. They probably lack the system for turning all of their assets into intelligence, right? Now, what do I mean by a system? So we came up with this term intelligence blueprints, that the idea is of any of these intelligent solutions, whether it be a chatbot, whether it be a recommendation on a screen or a form that someone's filling in, whether it be a decision engine or a new dashboard that's going to give predictions and ideas and insights. It comes down to these three layers of category, the system does. The first, you've got to get the human experience right. It's got to work around their future desired journey, not just enhance maybe the clunky journey they've got today. You've got to reimagine their journey. You've got to make sure the UI is easy to use, is what they're expecting to use at home, with all of the great AI tools that are coming out. It's got to be conversational in nature, it's got to be image rich, etc. So how you design your products and services to fit around the humans that are going to interact with your products is the first major step that you've got to crack and get a system in place for. The one at the bottom is about getting all of your legacy systems, all of your current systems, your SaaS applications and your custom applications ready for providing context and data and information for the intelligent systems, for the services, for the AI. Prepare your data. That doesn't mean you need a 9-month data warehousing or data lakehouse project, but you need to know where your data is, and you need to know the processes and the system to actually prepare that. You need to know that, what capabilities you are building to be able to ingest data in something that agents, let's say, can actually leverage on that. You've got to make sure your APIs are exposed in the right way. And I meet a lot of organizations who say, yeah, we've got a connectivity strategy. We've got a developer portal with all of our APIs exposed in it, open AI specs for open API specs for all of our APIs, and we've got tests for all of them. Great foundations. The next step now is to describe those APIs in such a way that an agent or intelligence service can actually understand it. So you've got to describe them in more outcome-oriented ways, not developer-oriented ways. So there's work to do to get those ready so that agents can actually use those well. And it's a well-trodden path. It's just something that should be on your roadmap. You know, you don't have to do all of your APIs in one go. You know, our recommendation is look at the intelligence you want to apply, see what data you need and what APIs you need and what capabilities in the platform you need, and build those up first of all, right? So once you've got the systems ready, it's now about identifying the right intelligence, the right place to apply the AI in your solutions, in your processes or your screens that you're offering out to your customers or your automations in the background. So, you know, you want to do this in a consistent way. You don't want to do it fragmented. You don't want everyone building their own sort of loco agents in the way that they want to do. You want to build up a roadmap really of what intelligence you want to build, what capabilities you need for that, what choices and patterns you're going to apply, and then rolling that out and then making, when you've learned from that and you've made the successes, make that available to the rest of the organization, right, to apply. So I come back to something we used to talk about even 20 years ago within architecture, and that is reference architectures. You know, capabilities models, the ability to say your organization has now got these assets that will allow you to build agents fast, will allow you to build conversational AI or smart assistants fast, that will allow you to build decision systems. This doesn't now have to take a long time, you know. Architecture, always the pain in architecture was documenting it, getting buy-in. We can use AI to document these fairly fast, to discover all of your existing capabilities, right? So, but, you know, this is the system I'm talking about that will allow you to build custom products that are tailored with your data, your workflows, your user interactions as fast as you can build the base 44 low code systems. This is what will allow you to roll out to your business the equivalent, but tailored with your organization, with all of those assets that we've talked about in the previous slides. So reference architecture will have a set of patterns. It will have these blueprints that will allow you to just almost drag down the designs for instance, in this example, a smart assistant, and it will say, right, apply the data that you need, the platforms that you need, and will generate out designs and architectural overviews and archetypes for that. Okay, and map to the technology. So I strongly recommend you take a step back, you look at that reference architecture for how you will apply AI solutions, pick some opportunities and take them through that process. Now, as we've said, that, yeah, if you do that, you know, the promise of this is that AI, rather than becoming just an efficiency and a productivity tool, just a tool, it becomes a capability that will, you know, be a real enabler for your business strategy. It will allow you to push out these solutions a lot faster, yeah, and iterate round. This will be the way that you differentiate in your market in the future. And I'd also argue this is the biggest factor in building trust in AI, giving people the standards, the patterns, the proven successes, the guardrails, if you like, and the accelerators to be able to actually learn about Gen AI and learn about the benefits. I think, as well as the technology and the architecture, there's a few more elements that we want to have a think about. You know, to me, success and making an impact for API with AI is about these categories of success: people, strategy, products, assets, delivery and operations. We need to progress in all of these to be successful. This is a technology and an approach that is going to impact the whole organization. So we've got to take people along with that. And we actually, as a business, we did a scaling up an initiative, and as part of that program, you identify the habits that you want the whole organization to start doing. And as a business, GW, we take 4 habits each quarter, and we, socialize those and we work on it and we think about, if every quarter we can start building positive habits as an organization, we'll move towards our goal. And I've taken that approach and we've actually built habits for each of these six success factors. I've actually identified 6 habits within each that you can start doing today. And if you do these in the right areas, it will shift the organization towards more enterprise AI thinking rather than siloed AI thinking, towards AI for value rather than AI as just a shiny tool. These sort of habits are I've just given you one example from each just to give you the feeling. But this is one takeaway that I think you can take from today, that, there are things you can start doing now to change your thinking to move towards more enterprise AI value, testing quickly, making sure when you build your product, AI fits around what the user needs. Literacy through practice, I call it. It's not all, people are not going to learn AI by reading books and by attending a 1-hour webinar from me. They're going to learn it by actually doing it, trying it, see how it feels, right? The systems you're building, you want them to be tools that AI can use, capabilities that AI can interact with. And ultimately, you want your operations team not to be saying, oh, we can't deploy that model into production, but more like, we've got a sandbox for you with that model already deployed. Use that for a day and see what the results are like. So these are just examples, 6 out of the 36 habits. There is an assessment that you can go through that you just answer a number of questions, 25 questions, should only take 5 minutes to fill in, that will then determine or give you a bit of advice about which are the best habits to work with now. So yeah, we'll send out a link with this afterwards, so you don't have to take that at the moment. I'm actually pushing an update to this later today, so if you do take a screenshot, then have a go on this tomorrow morning, right? So we've gone through some of the problems that we're having, some of my view of what's going wrong within organizations, why they're only getting siloed value from AI, a bit of a system and a platform of how you can put in things in place to make sure it makes an enterprise difference. And hopefully those takeaways I introduced at the start, that hopefully you've learned something through that, and you can have a look at these habits and have a look at my information intelligent blueprint, and maybe that'll generate some more questions. Hopefully some of those fears that you, or those barriers that you introduced at the start, maybe some of these elements will resonate. So I'm going to open up the floor for 10-15 minutes for any questions. But before I do, just in case people have to drop off, just want to do a bit of a plug as well. We're down in London in 2 weeks' time, and we're going to build on some of the topics that we've talked to today, but make it a bit more interactive. This is your real chance to give your perspective on this. So we're hosting a roundtable breakfast in the centre of London. So if you're free, please reach out to me or to Tom. You might have got a contact from him already. And yeah, there's still a few seats left, I think, on that, Tom. It's quite full, but we'll make sure anyone in this webinar gets in on that if they want to join.
Yeah, we have a couple of seats available, so yeah, be quick.
Yeah. Okay. So, any questions? Any feedback?
I've dropped one in for you, Mark. Obviously, you mentioned hopes and fears earlier. What are your hopes and fears?
For AI within the market and my industry. Well, I think what I'm so hopeful of is that we have reached a stage, and those who know me know I've got three kids who will be moving into the workforce in the coming years, and it's so exciting. One of them's technology all over, one of them's in music, and one of them still hasn't quite decided. But I think the way that their careers will pan out will be so exciting. They will be focusing now on value, and there won't be, those 9 to 5 jobs of translating data from one place to another. If they find the right niche and, we're developing them with the right skills, I think their careers will be really exciting. So that's my hope. And the related fear is that the whole market doesn't move on with my views and my thoughts, and everyone just automates the crap out of everything, and actually it the future does not look as exciting, that anyone can create anything, and you can start solving some bigger problems, and people are just doing more the same, and it becomes a race to the bottom, and everyone just wants productivity. So I think those are my two sort of hopes and fears. Yeah. So just looking at the questions, the important business impact gap, any advice on that? But feel free as well to put cameras on and join in with the conversation. Any advice on how to measure the success from newly implemented platforms to help stakeholders continue to invest? Interestingly, Joanne, last time I did this webinar, we had a very, very similar question. I could take that in 2 ways, that it is the burning question for a lot of people, or I didn't learn from that and do the feedback loop and make sure I covered it when I did my slides. So I'll take both of those things as true. Now, I think that it's a really good question, and it's what a lot of organisations are wrestling with. What measures success of these platforms? And ultimately, I think people fall into one trap, that they treat AI as a tool, and they need to put a KPI on what will AI itself do for our organization. And then they start measuring impact on productivity again, right? Whereas AI is cross-cutting across everything. It is like if you were bringing in a new super clever graduate, how would you measure their success? Well, you'd partly do it on, are they learning, are they contributing more? But ultimately, as they get more experienced, you'd measure them on the business KPIs, the areas that you have brought them in to help with. And I think I can't answer for every organisation, but if we shift the thinking to say, right, what is the real North Stars for the business? What does the future look like? How do we measure that we're moving to that future? And then how can AI help with those measures? That you're actually tying AI adoption to those business KPIs and measures, and then you can say, using these solutions, we're going to impact these business metrics, right? Now, I know for business cases and for procurement and for even, resourcing challenges, you've got to put benefits towards direct investments. So at that stage, I would say, well, out of these measurable business impacts, these elements will be improved by 50% or 100% or 10% by the introduction of AI. So you're tying directly that AI implementation to that benefit. I see a lot of organizations that will take those first AI implementations as learning exercises and will say, great, it may cost X and we're only expecting half the value back from it, but it will be an enabler. We will learn from that. And that's great. I also see other organizations that say half the value is not good enough, we're not spending the money on it. So I think that's where you need to bring all the initiatives together, almost get a roadmap of the next 5 or 10 things that you're going to do, and treat it like a portfolio of products that you can say, these are the foundations we're going to put in place to really allow us to leverage the values and the business successes from those 5 elements. So, that's my view, Joanna. I don't know if you've got any other, Joanna, have you got any other sort of sub questions on that? Does that help? Any more gaps? I think I'll move on to the other question. Leon, with so many tools out there, all claiming to do the same thing, how do you select the AI tools to use? So, we could have answered that over the past sort of 20 years, with just in general, how do you select SaaS applications? How do you select engineering frameworks, right? There are a number of stages you need to go through. First, you've got to really understand, what's out there and what tools are there. That's getting faster, changing faster and faster. So part of my role in GW is understanding what's out there, what are people using, what benefits are they getting from those. So I'd implore everyone to sort of document, almost have a tech radar or document the successes they're getting, share knowledge in that so that people know what the reality is of what these tools' strengths are, not what they're claiming in their marketing they can do. Secondly, then it's understanding well the problem you need to solve. What characteristics do you really prioritize within a tool to actually, get the benefits from that, and then match that to those tools. And thirdly, the only real way to select it is to try it, I think, in my view, right? The final choice needs to be having the ability to say, well, I'm going to try that in Claude or in ChatGPT, or I'm going to try V0 as opposed to Codex. Does it meet the needs, right? And then iterate round and constantly, test and try those things. So that means in whatever system or platform you put in place, you need the ability to try things early. You need the ability to swap out models for other models and see whether they meet the promise of being faster or being smaller or being more accurate, right? So I think in summary, Leon, it's about understanding well what's out there and sharing all the knowledge on that, understanding exactly what the needs of your requirement or product is and being able to match it to that, and then being able to try things out and to be able to iterate round. And if you build that platform and system and culture, then it will be more iterative of finding out what's there. Leon, any comments on that or any follow-ups to that?
No, it's good. I think the one thing would be sort of like how you evaluate and grade those things, and I guess just keeping focus on this is the objective and not just trying new tools, but still delivering that value. So that's I think
the shiny object anti-pattern of everything looks great the first time you use it. Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I would say, having experience of lots of these tools, is that the bottom, the floor of all of the capabilities is much higher than it's ever been. So most of these tools will satisfy what you need. Then it comes down to personal preference and your environments. So with certain clients, we use, rather than being able to use, or rather than being governed correctly to be able to use Claude or elements like that, they're very much a Microsoft and Azure house. So it's Copilot, GitHub Copilot, agents, and Codex, right? So there's been personal preferences in certain things that people have found Claude really easy to use. So we've prototyped in that, and then we've built it with GitHub Copilot and Codex, and the results are just as good. Once you know what you're trying to do and you know how to use those tools and you can iterate round, you'll probably find most of the major tools will give you what you need. Whereas if I go back 10 or 20 years, we definitely had preferences where we built up capabilities in Oracle technology or Azure or AWS technologies, and you feel, actually, we shouldn't try anything out because there's such a barrier of entry to get to that level. That's not the case now with these AI tools. They're doing, you're abstracted away enough that as long as you're instructing it correctly, giving it the context, you will get good results with most of these tools. So I think it's less impactful to make a temporary wrong decision on a choice of a tool. You will learn from that and you'll be able to move quickly. Whereas, with cloud platforms 10 years ago, you make the wrong decision, you were tied in.
And that was it. It was always the things that, I'm sure at one point there was a new JavaScript framework popping up every month, and it was like, which is the one that we should use? And, there was a big cost then because you develop something, you'd have to recode it. So interesting.
The cost of portability was much higher than it is now, as long as you take the right approach of versioning your prompts, versioning your your assets and your, you know, kind of make sure you're keeping your RAG documents separately, you know, and things like that. You take the right approach. The portability is really high now with these technologies and tools.
Great.
Yeah. Hey,
Well,
Manny.
Manny's got a hand up, yeah. Well, Manny's still on mute. Can't hear you.
Sorry, I think when I move the headphone thing, can you hear me now, right? Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess the sort of other side of the spectrum with this, right? So I totally get that you don't want like loads of little fragmented kind of ideas and stuff, and you want that kind of holistic end-to-end sort of business value. I guess, you know, from a manager leadership type perspective, I've often always wanted to really kind of encourage that sort of innovation and sort of idea generation within teams and stuff like that. Because sometimes, you know, people just see a problem differently and kind of, you know, can really transform, you know, impacts that they haven't even envisaged, right? But I guess, is there another side of this? So even though it has become so much more accessible, I still feel it's attracting, you know, people that perhaps are more comfortable kind of like making that first leap. And I wonder if there is kind of, you know, more of a need for things like hackathons and stuff like that, where you've kind of got that initial you know, framework in place, Mark, I guess, to help people make that leap and think about problems in a different way.
I totally agree. And you get innovation by people of different mindsets trying different things, right? What I've always wanted to encourage, though, is stand on the shoulder of giants. If someone has solved some problems that are not in your core innovation domain, make it as easy as possible to reuse that and build on top of that. That compounding moment that I talked about, you know, is let's all not just innovate of how easy it was to build a very simple app, although people might do that to learn from that. I'd rather say how easy it was to take the app that Manny built and then I've built on this feature that you hadn't even thought about from it. Look what I've done here. And you go, wow, I haven't even thought about that. That's opened up this other line of thought. So everyone building from each other and sharing. And I think with AI doing a lot of the, you know, the grunt work almost of building that for you, you can start working on building on other people's ideas, not just their engineering, right? And I think that's really powerful. And I think we'll see a huge shift of apps doing things that we'd never envisaged before because so many other people can contribute now. The barrier to entry of being able to understand how to engineer products is gone, really, right? Anyone can contribute.
No, that makes sense, Mark. And I've kind of seen it from a pre-AI days of sort of inner source projects and stuff where you're all kind of building on one another's work and kind of resharing those patterns and stuff. And I guess this is another elevation of that, but it's always just that communication, socialization of it, you know, so people know what's there and how they can. And I guess that's where some of the reference architecture and some of that.
I think that's the key thing for me. The reference architecture is an enabler. It's a set of blueprints. It's a set of accelerators that makes it easy for people. It means I don't have to worry about the security concerns, the platform concerns, you know, all of these elements, because if you take a component out of it, that's just baked in, right? So, yeah, well, I think that takes us to the hour. So big thanks for all the contributions, all the questions, you know, and if you've got more questions, feel free to sort of ping me on LinkedIn or on my email address. So yeah, I really appreciate you listening to that. As you can tell, love talking about these topics. So I get a lot out of it as well, and all the questions help us refine, you know, what our messaging is. So many thanks, and hopefully we'll see some of you in 2 weeks for a breakfast event. Thank you.